Did you notice most Filipinos love singing?
And many of us wonder,
why do Filipinos sing so well? That is a question people around the world have been asking for decades, and it is not just a compliment or a stereotype. It is something that international audiences, talent show judges, music industry professionals, and ordinary people from countries that have never even been to the Philippines have all independently noticed and remarked upon. When a Filipino takes the microphone at a karaoke bar in Tokyo, in Dubai, in Los Angeles, or in London, the room stops. People look up. Something happens that is hard to explain, and even harder to ignore. Think about your own family for a moment. Think about who the singer is. Because in almost every Filipino family, there is one. Maybe it is your mother, who never trained a day in her life, but can hit notes that trained singers struggle to reach. Maybe it is your Lola, who knows every word to every ballad from 3 different decades, and sings them all with a feeling that stops conversation in a room. Maybe it is your cousin at the karaoke machine, the one everybody waits for, the one who makes the whole gathering go quiet when their song comes on. And maybe, just maybe, it is you, standing in front of a microphone, surprising yourself with what comes out of your own body. You have probably wondered where that comes from. Whether it is real, whether there is a scientific reason, or whether it is just something Filipinos say about themselves. Today, science is finally giving us a complete answer. And the answer goes back much further than karaoke machines, much further than OPM radio stations, and much further than colonial church choirs. It goes back tens of thousands of years to a musical civilization built by your ancestors that UNESCO has now recognized as among the greatest in human history. This is the science behind why Filipinos can sing. Let us start with the most important question. Is singing ability something you are born with, or something you learn? For a long time, scientists and music teachers debated this endlessly. The popular belief was that singing is purely a trained skill, that with enough practice and the right teacher, anyone can learn to sing well. But modern behavioral genetics research has now conclusively shown that this is only half the story. Before karaoke, before OPM, before Spain ever arrived on the shores of the Philippine archipelago, before 1521, the islands were already alive with music. Not the music of church hymns or colonial ballads. Something completely different. Something ancient and complex and deeply human. A musical civilization that had been developing for thousands of years before any European ship ever crossed the Pacific. The Ifugao people of the Cordillera Mountains in northern Luzon, the same people who built the rice terraces of Banaue, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, had a vocal tradition called the hudhud, an ancient chanting tradition that researchers estimate originated before the 7th century. It consists of more than 200 individual chants, divided into 40 distinct episodes, sung across multiple days during the rice harvest, at funeral wakes, and during sacred community rituals. Think about what that means in practice. Imagine a community where the harvest itself is accompanied by singing, where death is honored with days of chanted song, where the entire cycle of life, planting, growing, harvesting, mourning, celebrating, unfolds through the human voice. That is not a culture that treats singing as entertainment. That is a culture that treats singing as the language of existence itself. In the year 2001, UNESCO proclaimed the Hudhud chants of the Ifugao as a masterpiece of the oral and intangible heritage of humanity, one of only 19 such designations given worldwide in that first proclamation. And that is not the only one. The Maranao people of Lake Lanao in Mindanao had the Darangjan, an ancient epic song consisting of 17 cycles and approximately 72,000 lines of chanted verse, predating even the arrival of Islam in the southern Philippines in the 13th century. The Darangjan tells the entire story of the Maranao people, their customs, their laws, their love stories, their wars, their relationship with the divine, all through melodic chanting performed by hereditary singers who trained their entire lives to carry this tradition forward. 72,000 lines, chanted from memory, by singers who inherited this role from their parents and their grandparents before them. In 2005, UNESCO proclaimed the Darangjan as the second Philippine masterpiece of oral and intangible heritage of humanity. 2 UNESCO masterpieces of human singing tradition, from the same archipelago, from a civilization that existed entirely before colonization arrived, before anyone gave Filipinos a Spanish surname, a Catholic hymnal, or a karaoke machine. Now think about your grandmother again, the one who knew every word to every song, who never needed a songbook, never needed a prompt, never needed to be asked twice. Where do you think that memory came from? That feeling, that instinct, that music is not something you watch, it is something you do, something you carry, something you pass on. It came from this, from 72,000 lines of chanted epic poetry, carried in the blood of a people who sang, because singing was how they remembered who they were. Now here is where the science connects to the story in a way that should stop you in your tracks. Researchers studying the connection between culture and genetics have identified a phenomenon called gene-culture coevolution. It works like this. When a culture consistently values and practices a specific behavior across many generations, the people who are naturally better at that behavior become more successful, socially, romantically, in their community. Over time, those natural gifts spread through the population. Culture and biology evolve together, each one reinforcing the other, until the population is both culturally trained in the behavior and biologically inclined toward it. An evolutionary psychologist at the London School of Economics has argued that Filipinos are a compelling example of gene-culture coevolution. Singing in the Philippines was not just entertainment, it was woven into every dimension of life. Ancient Filipinos sang during planting and harvesting. They sang during healing rituals led by the Babaylan, the sacred spiritual leaders of pre-colonial Filipino communities. They sang during courtship. They sang to pass down law and history and cosmology across generations in the absence of written records. Music was not a hobby in ancient Filipino society, it was infrastructure. It was how the community remembered its laws, how healers called the spirit back into the sick, how a young man told a family he was worthy of their daughter. And when a behavior is that important, when it is survival, the people who are better at it thrive, and their children carry those gifts forward. Think about the Babaylan for a moment. She was the healer, the spiritual leader, the keeper of sacred knowledge in her community. And she sang. The ritual was inseparable from the voice. Healing happened through chanting. The most important figures in pre-colonial Filipino society were singers, not as a side talent, but as the core of their role. Your ancestors did not separate music from life. They were the same thing. Now let us talk about something hiding in plain sight, something you use every single day without realizing it has been training your voice your entire life. The Filipino languages: Tagalog, Cebuano, Ilocano, Hiligaynon, Waray, and the more than 170 other indigenous languages of the Philippine archipelago share something that linguistic researchers have identified as unusually well suited to vocal music. Filipino languages are built on open vowels. The sounds A, I, O, U, pronounced cleanly, fully, openly, without the nasal closings or throat constrictions that characterize many other Asian languages. When voice coaches in Western conservatories try to teach classical singing technique, one of the first things they work on is getting students to open their vowels, to stop closing the throat, to project sound through a fully resonant mouth position. Filipino children do this naturally from the moment they begin to speak. Every time you say a word in Tagalog, every time you sing along to a song in Cebuano, every time you call out to someone in Ilocano, you are producing exactly the open vowel sounds that trained singers spend years learning to produce correctly. Your language has been your vocal coach your entire life, from your very first words. Think about that the next time someone compliments your voice and asks where you trained. You trained at home, at the dinner table, on the way to school, in every conversation you ever had in your native tongue. Now let us talk about the moment the voice goes from inside the family to inside the room. Because every Filipino knows this moment. You are at a gathering, a birthday party, a fiesta, a Christmas celebration, a reunion, and someone picks up a microphone, and the room shifts. The conversations happening in corners stop. People turn. Because in a Filipino gathering, the moment the microphone comes out, everyone knows that what is about to happen matters. It is not background music, it is a performance. It is someone saying, "This is who I am, and I am going to show you with my voice." The Filipino fiesta, the Filipino family karaoke night, the birthday party where everyone sings. These are not just traditions. They are, in the language of developmental science, optimal learning environments for the human voice. You grew up in one of those environments every single week. Think about how many times you performed as a child, not on a real stage, not in a competition, just in front of your family, with a microphone in your hand and people watching. Think about how many times someone clapped for you, told you your voice was beautiful, asked you to sing again. Think about what that did to your relationship with your own voice. That specific, repeated, emotionally genuine encouragement from the people whose opinion matters most to you. That is one of the most powerful drivers of long-term vocal development that behavioral science has ever documented. And Filipino children receive it constantly.